Hi there, in this session I'm going to show you how you can build Power Platform solution aware Power BI reports. They kind of sound too good to be believed, and what I'm going to do straight away is dive in and give you a little demo of what we're going to cover in this session. So it's going to be an end-to-end building of that, but first of all we're going to do a quick demo. So this is me in my development environment, and what you can see is a Power BI report inside that environment. What I can do here is I can hit the three dots here and then open in Power BI. What this is going to do is it's going to open a Power BI instance, and we'll be able to see that report that I have built. Now it's not a very exciting looking report, but notice here that we can see dspin eurodev.crm.dynamics.com. That is the environment domain for that. And what I'm going to do now is going to jump back out and show you the same one but in production. So here I am, I'm in my production environment. If I actually pop back and look at all the solutions in here, what you'll see is this is a managed solution. So if I just jump into there, what I'll see is all of the components to that, and you can see that I've got my report there. And if I hit the three dots on this, I'm going to go open in Power BI, and it's going to open up Power BI, but it's going to do that in the workspace associated with that environment. So what you can see there, I'm in the Solutions Prod Europe environment, and this time round you can actually see the environment is looking in a completely different place. And that is exactly what we're going to build in this session. I hope you're excited about this. Now, whilst this is not by any stretch of the imagination an exciting looking report at all, the process that we're going to go through is going to be really, really cool. So we've already had a look at the finished product. It's important because we've never ever been able to do this before. We've never been able to package up an entire solution which includes our apps, our flows, and all the tables associated with that, and be able to move that into another environment. Do be aware this is in preview at the moment, but it's being worked on, and the more I've worked with this, I've thought, you know what, this is really close to being the real thing. So what I'm now going to do is talk about what we're going to cover in this session. We're going to do some setup checks, and the first setup check that we're going to do is we're going to check our Power BI region. This one really caught me out because my region is Europe. I didn't know that until I started working with this. We're also going to check our environment configuration because there is a setting that we need to make a change to in that area. Then what we're going to do is going to build a really amazingly simple solution with a little model-driven app associated with it. And then what I'm going to do is create a Power BI report. Now this is probably the hardest part of the process. So we're going to create that. We've got to put in parameters and so on, connect to the environment, and we've got to do it in quite a specific way. It's not too difficult, but if you're not familiar with parameters, then in Power BI, then you might find this a little tricky and a little new. We're going to introduce the report into a solution, and that I'm going to bring that into the dev solution. Then what I'm going to do is update the dataset parameters. Once we've done that, we can refresh the report. We'll be able to refresh that report online. Then we're going to review the report. We're going to edit the report again just to show how you can make edits to that report, because it's not completely intuitive. Then we're actually going to export our solution into a new environment. We're going to make the change to the parameters in our production environment. And then finally, we are going to view our revised report. So this is going to be kind of heavy, but I'm going to work at real pace to get us through this. So the first thing I'm going to do here is find out what my Power BI region is. In order to do that, I need to hit the three dots there, help and support, and then head down to about Power BI. What that'll then tell me is that my data is stored in North Europe and a few other details associated. But our most important part here is North Europe. Now, what I need to do is to make sure that my environment for the Power Platform is aligned to this. That's a current limitation. Now, in order to confirm the locations of my data, all I need to do is head to the cog here. We're just going to go to the admin center. Now, you may need permission to get to the right place on this. That's always a consideration here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look at the environment that I'm interested in. So here's all my environments, and this is my Dev Europe environment, and you can see the region is Europe. That's the important part here. So if I was to try and do the exercise that we're doing, and I was trying to do it with my demo environment, it just wouldn't work because it's not aligned to my Power BI region. Now there's actually one more thing that I need to do with that environment. I'm going to show you with this experiments environment here. I'm just going to jump into that environment and then show you that what you need to do is go down to your resources, and then your Dynamics 365 apps. Now I may have actually done this already. I'll go to Power BI, just type in Power BI there, and then you'll see that the integrate extensions for this is enabled, but if it's not enabled, you'd hit the three dots. In fact, it's enabled, and then you would select install on there, and then it would install. It would take about sort of 10 minutes to do that. Now, if I change the environment and move to one that I can use that on, all I would do is go to Dev Europe. That's the environment that we're going to be using. And I can then go to the Dynamics 365 apps and then type in Power BI, and then you can see that that is enabled. We're okay on that. In fact, we can install it, but I'm mindful that this is actually already working, so I will leave that one for the moment. It's very straightforward to install. It takes maybe about 10 minutes to do so, but it is an important part of the process that we need to go through. So I've decided I'm going to build a solution. I'm going to go down to my solutions, and I'm now going to select new solution. The display name is going to be demo PBI solution aware. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Pop a little publisher in there. I'm going to use my PPL Power Platform Learn publisher, and then select create, and that's just going to create an empty solution for me. Inside that solution, I'm then going to go and add some tables that exist already. So I'm going to add the account table, and then I'm going to build a model driven app because it's pretty straightforward to do. So I'm going to go add existing and go down to table. Now everyone will have the account table, so that's a fairly straightforward one to do, so you'll be able to do that without any problems. Select next. I'm going to select include all objects and then select add. It just moves around and then we're okay. The account table has gone in there. Then what I'm going to do is I am going to build myself a model driven app so that I can actually add data into this table. So I'm going to go app, and then go model driven app. So it's a very simple process that we're going to build this app. We're actually going to build a view and a form. So all we need to do is select add a page. It says Dataverse table. Then we select next. Then I'm going to select account and then add. Now there's already data in there. I knew that was the case anyway, so this was data that I'd been playing around with before. And then I can select save on it, then publish, and then I can play it and just make sure that I'm actually able to enter data. I'm going to select publish. Move over to play. This is our app that is now working in our development environment that is based in Europe, which is aligned to our Power BI tenant data location. So I'm going to select new on that. It's going to be very simple. I'm just going to say account demo. And then I'm going to do save and close on that because the data is not too important at this point in time. So you can see that I can actually add data to that. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to build a Power BI report. So what we're going to need to do is open an instance of Power BI desktop. So I'm open on a report which actually has no data in it at all. What I need to do is go and select on Dataverse, and what it's going to do is it's going to make sure you're authenticated to Dataverse, and then it's going to offer me all of the environments to which I have access. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build a really straightforward report, and then I'm actually going to fix the connections so that it actually works correctly, so that we actually tie it to a parameter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Dev Europe here, and then I'm going to select the account table that we were working with before. Select account. I'm going to expect to see 4 rows in this. And then once I've done that, I'm going to select to load, because I don't really, I'm not too interested in the data that's there. Okay, select load. It's given me the option of importing versus direct query. I'm going to select import. And then it's going to pull the data in from that environment. And as you can see, it's added 4 rows into there. That was what I was expecting. If I go to the data table, then I'll be able to see the data that's within there. So there's my 4 rows. They're just about to pop up now. There's my 4 rows. Not very much interesting data there. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to build myself a very, very basic report. In fact, yeah, let's just do that. And I'm going to type in name. So there's my account name. Pop that on the screen there. Maybe turn that into a little table. And then what I'm also going to do is I will bring the account name in again. And then I will just turn it into a card. And it's going to go first account name, but I'm actually going to say, well, just give me a count of that, and that's going to give me the number 4, which we can use later on. So that was the easy bit. What we're now going to do is we're going to change how we got the data, only very slightly by using parameters. So if I right click on this and then select edit query, it'll take me to Power Query. And you can see the steps that it's gone through in order to get the correct data. So what you can actually see is the source exercise. This is the interesting bit here. So it says common data service data.database, and then it shows the environment domain. And we're going to change that to use a parameter. So I'm going to go to manage parameters. And I'm going to create a parameter. Now, this is a really, really important point, because it will fail if you don't do this next step. What you need to do is you need to make sure that the type is text. If you don't have it as text, then it just won't work. Now, what I do need to do is I need to make sure that the value is the correct value. Now, I'm just going to put test in there at the moment because it won't let me come out of there. But what I'm also going to do is I'm now going to go onto account, because I know the correct value for this is actually dspin Europe dev.crm4.dynamics.com. So I'm just copying that. I'm going to jump into my param environment. I'm going to pop that value in there, and then I'm going to go back onto here, and I've got to go to the source here, and I'm going to replace that value. So I'm going to type in param, and that's going to bring in the param environment. Now, in theory, if I've done everything correct, then that's just going to make no difference at all, because it's still going to use the same value it used before. So we shouldn't see any changes in the data. But it is a very, very, very important consideration as far as us building this report. Now, one of the cool things on this is I'm going to change this here so I enable the load of this, because it's quite a neat little value to be able to bring it into your report. So I'm going to click close and apply on that, and then apply changes. And this time round, it's bringing in param environment into it. So I can actually pop it on the screen, and we'll actually be able to see the change in environment when we look at it in one Power BI report versus another Power BI report, because the numbers aren't really that interesting at the moment. So we've got 1 row loaded for the param, that's expected, and then 4 rows for the account. So what I can now do is I can now go and pick the parameter. There's my param environment, and I can just drag that onto the screen, and we'll probably make it a bit bigger. Let's see if we can put that onto a card. Yeah, that's pretty big. It'll be pretty obvious when we get there. There we are. So when we move between our environments, we're going to see this change. That's going to give us a kind of warm feeling that we've done the right thing. Now I need to save this. I need to save it onto my desktop so I can then publish it up to any environment. Just hold that thought. So I'm going to do File, Save, and then select Save. So it's got a name now. And what I need to do is publish that up to an environment. So there we are, we've done that. And now I'm going to select Publish. And I'm going to type in, I'm going to see if I've got a demo environment. Sandbox demo, that will do. It doesn't really matter where we put it. And then I'm going to select here. And then I will go up and I will just check that it's actually behaving itself up in that in that workspace. The best way of doing that is to wait for it to finish publishing, get the URL, and then you navigate to the URL that you see on the screen here. So that's going to open up Power BI for me. Now that we're in here, I would normally go to More Options, See Related Content. At the first time it loads up, you won't actually see it correctly in your workspace. And so you'll actually need to navigate to the workspace and then you would need to go to the demo. There we are, and I'll see the various things that are in there, and then I can go and hit the dots on there, and I can navigate to I can navigate to scheduled refresh. Then what you can do is go to the data source credentials, then go edit credentials, then you sign yourself in, and at that point that report would be able to refresh. We will be doing this again later on. Strictly speaking, you don't need it for this element of it, but it's one of those things that I like to make sure I've done. Now that we've done this, that's pretty well the majority of the report writing that we're going to have done in this session. So what we need to do now is to return back to our Power Platform solution and introduce that report into our solution. This is the kind of fun bit. It's the cool bit that they've made for us. So let's just jump across to that. So I'm in my Dev Europe environment, but I don't have a Power BI report here. Now this feels tricky because it feels like you should do new, and that is not the thing to do. What you need to do is go to Add Existing, and then you go to Analytics, and then you go to Power BI Report. You might also be tempted to go and look for something from elsewhere, but this is the way to do it. So this time round, we need to go from Power BI. I want you to go and get this from Power BI. So there's from Power BI. Go and choose your workspace. That was the sandbox environment that we were using earlier on. And then it's going to go and show what we can use from that area. And then I'm going to select on our account demo and then add it. So hopefully, I know that was quick, but it is literally that quick. What it's going to do, it's going to add that solution, add that Power BI report into our solution. It doesn't actually take that long. It will depend on whether or not you've done it before. So you might find if this is the first time that you're doing it, that'll actually take a little bit of time. But please be patient because it's all well worth waiting for. So for me, that took maybe about 2-3 minutes, pretty straightforward, and the more times I've done it, I've not really experienced too many difficulties. Now, we can do something already with this. We can actually go into here and we can then go open in Power BI. So it's going to go, but this time round, it's going to go to our dedicated workspace, our Power Platform workspace. But look at this, it's not refreshed. This is a problem. So we need to now configure this so that it can actually refresh properly. Now, in order to do that, what you need to do is you need to go onto the dataset. This feels strange. I think that some of these bits feel strange. I think they've done a great job of this. Now, what you need to do is you need to go to Edit Parameters. This is a new kind of place for us to go into. And then what I'm going to do is going to go Add Parameter. What parameter am I going to add? I'm going to actually add the parameter that we set up earlier on. And then this is the magic bit. Replace the text, the current value with, what are we going to replace it with? Well, we're actually going to replace it with the current environment domain. Now, it's just going to know what that domain is, and we'll see later on that it does, and the proof is when we actually move it into production. Now, we could change it to be an environment variable, and if you did, you would have to select the correct variable. We don't need to do that. We could do that if we wanted to, maybe if it was a SQL database or some other data source, but we don't need to do that because it's Dataverse. So they've actually effectively given us a free variable that we can use. So what I'm going to do is select on this, and I'm going to do current environment domain, and then I'm going to select add. Now, if you remember that process that we went through in the admin center with Dynamics, that part of the process is the thing that communicates between Power BI and Dataverse that value. So this is quite neat. So we're not far off being able to finish this. We can now go back to the solution. And if I select all, then we get to see all elements of that solution. And this time round, I'm actually going to go up into the cloud. And I'm going to see if I can get this thing to refresh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto the data set, and then I'm going to go open in Power BI. So off it goes up to Power BI. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not quite happy with how I'm seeing this at the moment. I actually want to see all the data sets and so on. So this is what we made here just in this session. And what I can do is I can go to the scheduled refresh part of this and then go on to data source credentials. Now this is the bit where it passed that parameter across. I can now go to edit credentials. And what you can see here is hard coded within here is this dspin Europe dev.crm.4.dynamics.com. So what I can now do is select sign in on that. So do be careful. This is not the same value as before. This actually came from Dataverse, and that's why it's cool. So I'm going to actually select on that. That's going to authenticate that in. And then what we can do is we can move back and we can go and onto the solutions. And then what we can do is we can actually just one little check on the data. We know the data shouldn't have updated yet. In fact, it has. I wasn't expecting that, but that was really quick. I think it did a first refresh of that. But what we can do now is come off there, and then I'm actually going to go on to, that's in development. So let's go and have a look at our app that we made. And what I'm going to do is go onto there, and I'm going to go onto the app, and then go play on that app. And I think I may have just realized what it's done. It's not quite refreshed yet. It sort of thinks it's refreshed, but it hasn't, because we've got that extra item in there. So if I go onto this account POC, what I can do is, in fact, I don't want to confuse you guys too much. Back to here, and then I'm going to go open in Power BI. This would be the correct way of doing this. We're in our account POC demo, and just because I don't normally go in this way, I would then ordinarily go onto this, and I would select refresh now. So that's going to go and run the refresh process. And if we actually go into the dataset itself, then go to data source credentials. In fact, don't need to go there. What I wanted to do was go on to refresh history. This is the thing that tells me whether or not the thing actually ran. Now, I always get concerned when I see it just running the once. I always think, not sure if you really ran that time. So what I tend to do is go back and then just pop another little refresh in there just to give me that warm, fuzzy feeling that it's actually doing something. You can actually see it refreshing over on the right-hand side here. It was actually really, really quick. So what I can do now is jump onto this, and what we should see is that we've actually had 2 refreshes. So now this is really, really good now. This is okay as far as I'm concerned. So what we should find is that when we hit the back button and when we go onto the account POC demo, we should see our 4 lines of data are now in there. And there we are, our 4 lines of data. We have created a solution-aware Power BI report. And to demonstrate that it really is a solution-aware Power BI report, we're going to export it and push it into production, and then show that that report now works in production. This is really, really cool. So what I need to do is jump back there. And it's as simple as going back to our solutions so that I can select the solution. and then I can export the solution. Now the first thing it's going to say, well, hey, have you published all your changes? And it's definitely always good to make sure you've done that at least once, and that tends to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes depending on the size of your solution. Once it's done, you select next. We want to create a managed solution, so we're going to select export, and it can take a little bit of time for this to happen, maybe a little bit more time the first time round. So I'm probably thinking this is going to take 3 or 4 minutes tops. In this case, it took about 2 minutes for it to do this. Then I'm going to select download. I'm just going to download that onto my downloads folder, select save. Then I'm going to change environment to my Prod Europe environment. So there we are, Prod Europe. In fact, I might demonstrate how it would work in my production environment, because this won't work in my production environment. So if I go to import solution and go to browse and then try and bring this in, it won't be happy with me. And the reason why it won't be happy with me is because this production environment is not in Europe. So I would expect this to fail. And as you can see, it has failed. I was expecting this, but do make sure you look in the comments below, because we are expecting this to change at some point in the future. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to say, well, actually, okay, fine, I won't go in there. I will go into my Prod Europe environment, because that is in the correct region. And I'm going to come off there, and then I can go import solution, then I'm going to browse to my solution, and then select the solution, open, and then next, and one more next, and then we will be importing that into that environment. So how exciting is this? I'm excited. I've now imported that Power BI, the Power Platform solution with a Power BI report that is solution aware. Now, what I'm going to do is jump into that. Remember, we're in Prod Europe now. Jump into there. And we're going to see what we've got. We're actually going to see that report will have been built. So if I actually hit on the 3 dots there, I can then go and view, open this in Power BI. Now, I'm not so sure. I don't know if this will have the correct data in yet. So I'm kind of expecting that it probably won't have the correct data in. Yeah, and as expected, doesn't have any data, but that's not a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to the dataset. Then I'm going to go open in Power BI. Notice that I can't change the parameters. This is a managed solution. That's the whole idea. I'm going to select open in Power BI. It's going to take us to this area here. As before, I'm not so great at this area. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to go onto this, and notice that I'm in the Solutions Prod Europe workspace. Then I'm going to go onto the data set here, and then go on to the schedule refresh. That's how we need to make our changes. Then go on to the data source credentials, and then edit credentials there, and then sign in, and then it will all be nice and happy. So I'll make that signing in process there. And then what we can do is we'll go on to there, look at the solutions, and then we've got an option. Let's just have one quick look at this before we do anything. Refresh history, no refresh history. We can see that, which means that if we do make a refresh and it works, then we know that it's done it correctly. So what I can do is now select refresh on there, and away it goes. So you can actually see that at 2053, it says it refreshed. It wasn't really refreshed, it was just created. But you can see that at 2056 and 43, you can actually see that it's actually refreshed at that point, which means that we can now go into this report. Oh, drum roll, drum roll. So what we're expecting to see is this actually going to say, I know that the environment name says something like Prod Europe in it. So that is what I'm expecting to see. Select on there. And in we go, and we have now got our Power BI solution aware report. I think that is just so incredibly cool. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to head back, I'm going to add some data in there, hit the refresh again, and then say, I'm done here. You know, we've really done a great job. Here I am in Prod, in my managed solution. I'm going to go onto the model driven app, hit play on that. I'm going to add another account, maybe a couple more accounts. I'm going to do Teddy Berkowitz because he is the program manager for this. I'm hoping that I actually spelt it correctly. So I'm going to select Save and Close on this. And then I'm going to pop in maybe Scott Giroux because he's a nice guy. Scott Giroux. And maybe I'm going to pop in April Dunham. So I've navigated up to Prod Europe. I can hit the refresh option there, select refresh now. Off it goes. You can see it refreshing there. So when it changes, we can then go to the report itself. You can see it's changed. I can now go on to account POC demo. We should see our 6 records with all of those various people that I mentioned earlier on. That is really cool. Now, there is one thing that you may be considering, which is like, okay, Rory, that's a shocking report, which it is. What if I wanted to make it a better report than it currently is? Would I not just make a change in here? And the answer is like, no, you make your change in development. But how do you make your change in development? Well, let's go back to our Power BI report. I'm actually going to have to open this one up. So I'm in my report, I'm connected to Dev. I decided I wanted to make some changes to it. Select on the report. I can then just move this around here, maybe pop this over here and go and make a change. Yes, maybe you'd pop a heading in. So maybe a little text box that you might pop in. So now what do we do with it? Well, it's different to the first time around. So what we need to do is need to go to home and then publish. But this time around, unfortunately, I lost my previous version because I had a bit of a conflict going on there. And that's now saved, and then I can go to home and then publish. And this is the bit I want you to pay attention to. You now need to go onto the Power. Oh, no, it hasn't actually done that. It's Solutions. Can you see Solutions Dev Europe? This is this dedicated workspace that you need to publish to. So you select on there. That's where I'm publishing to. Don't push it into prod. We're not doing that at all. We can now select that, and it's going to publish that up into development. And then what we'll see is that report will then change. We can now go to account POC demo, and the report is updated. And if we were then to export our solution and import it into production, then all of these changes would be reflected in the revised report. So that's it, we're done. We've created a solution aware Power BI report using Dataverse. We looked at how it actually worked, which is, I think, is quite cool. We saw why it's important for application lifecycle management and demonstrated that. We did our setup checks, which included looking at the Power BI region and also the environment configuration for the Dynamics integration. We created a simpler solution with a model-driven app. We created and published the report into any workspace. We then introduced the report into a solution, updated the dataset parameters, then we refreshed the report online. Some of that is a little bit fiddly. Then we viewed the report to make sure we were happy with it. We also did an edit of the report at the end. And then we imported it a whole lot into a new environment, and we updated. In fact, we didn't need to update the parameters in prod, they were already there. And we were able to view the revised report. I hope you've really enjoyed this, and I hope you get to build some really cool Power Platform solutions that include Power BI in the future. See you again soon.